and after a few years of hard work, everything will be decided this day. On the phone, the hero's relatives inform him that the drug has a 1% mortality rate, and it would be better for him not to do this. But the genetic pre-exams were passed, at which our hero scored good points. The conversation with the parents has been completed, and our hero is running towards a new life. It was quite noisy in the hall, and opposite will flash new faces of different people that our hero had not seen before. Our hero thought that the local people are very united, because many discussed the abilities they wanted to get. Having found the right place to go, our guy had only to pass several rooms with security. The check personally took some time, since most of the procedures will underwent with the help of retinal scanners and fingerprints. Our guy dreamed of getting the coolest genes to be super strong or fast, which would make life much easier. But it's pretty cool to dream about cool genes, but our guy wouldn't refuse simple ones either. Most of all, I didn't want to get strange abilities that could also be useless, which is why our hero could easily be defeated. That's what Will could dream about, so it's about the ability to see through clothes that would be considered the coolest among the guys. Some students were afraid of even 1% of failures, from which no one was insured, but most people went with confidence, because success was about 99% for the rest of the people. When it was Will's turn, all our hero could think about was how to successfully awaken good genes, and as soon as our hero thought that he would finally acquire new abilities, an explosion sounded in the room. This was the very 1% of failures that the students were so afraid of and did not want to get. A man engulfed in flames, rushing at people in agony. It could be said from his face that he was asking for help, but people didn't care. They were seized with fear of an unknown danger. Soon our torchlight friend fell, writhing in pain, occasionally sobbing and twitching. The rescue team arrived, immediately began to extinguish the victim, but all that remained of the man was a charred and mutilated body, more like a decomposed corpse. It was a student whose genome was destroyed due to an abnormal reaction to the injection. The surrounding people were no less scared than our hero, because the same fate could have befallen them. The charred corpse was carefully placed in a bag, trying to quickly remove everything related to the incident. Although William wanted to get super strength, but at the very thought that the same fate could befall him, he could not rest. Thinking over all the pros and cons, our guy still plucked up the courage and knocked on the door. And a pretty girl was already waiting for him outside the door, which did not bode well. Thoughtfully looking at her tablet, she began to ask questions that were about whether our hero was ready for the side effects of this procedure and even for fatal ones. William made the decision that he was ready for all the consequences, whatever happened. After completing all the preparations, the doctor took a syringe with an injection to prepare to inject it into our guy. And then the memories of today rolled over Will with furious force. Without thinking twice, our guy stepped forward to create a situation in which there would be no way back. The girl asked the hero to take off his pants and prepare his buttock, because the injection will begin right now. Although it was awkward, but our immediately complied with the request of the girl, making a grimace of surprise at the same time. The girl explained that the injection triggers the activation of the gene, and for the best effect it is injected into the femoral artery. After the drug was administered, the doctor explained that the first symptoms would appear soon. After 30 minutes, Will felt his strength leaving him, and he seemed to be falling somewhere. Our hero began to have a very bad headache. The pain was felt by every cell of the brain. The doctor hurried to help. Perhaps the body rejected the drug. After a while, Will let out a piercing scream and writhed in pain. The girl took her temperature. All vital signs decreased. The heart rate jumped sharply. The last thought that came to Will's mind was that this was the end for him. The next feeling that our hero experienced was lightness, as if he was floating in the air. Our guy couldn't believe what appeared in front of him, because he hadn't seen this before. His astral body appeared in front of William, which shone with a bright light. It was quite huge and looked majestic, and on the sides of this giant light yellow lights were spinning. After that, a discharge went through Will's body, as if struck by electricity, which brought our hero back to reality. The doctor recorded that the patient regained consciousness after the first discharge. The girl told him that 14 hidden genes were found in his body, which Will was very happy about, but after that it turned out that they all belonged to the erudition class. The doctor said that there should be no mistake, and that such people with such genes work mainly as office clerks or with society. After instructing the main character, the girl recorded all the data in a report so that Will could easily familiarize himself with the data received. And although the patient still had questions, the doctor said that the awakening of hidden genes does not mean that they will manifest. Just in case, the girl gave him a business card if she wanted to learn more about the hidden type or enroll in her university. Moreover, 9 out of 10 students chose the University of Genetic Evolution. Before the departure of the main character, the girl told that one should not catch the eye of the organization Redemption of Dawn. It was a group of people who betrayed humanity and colluded with alien invaders. Because of people like them in the last 100 years, humanity has suffered great losses among people, and even now they are not asleep and are engaged in abducting gifted people for their experiments. Already more than 5 students have been abducted, possessing more than 10 hidden genes. It's a pity that Will didn't know his abilities, and it would be nice to have some kind of combat skill. It turned out that the astral body had 14 light points, as well as the number of hidden genes. While the hero was in his thoughts and walking down the street, he met his friends. Lucas and Henry greeted Will warmly, telling him about their adventures and how many genes they had awakened. And although some of the faces showed a desire to move to another world as soon as possible, not everyone was happy with their hidden genes. It was nice to realize and see that they remained good friends after so many years. After Will's story that he had awakened 14 genes, friends were shocked to say the least. There were only a few dozen people in the entire district who had awakened 10 or more genes. And even though our hero saw sparks of happiness in the eyes of the guys, he still thought that the erudition class was not for him. Lucas noticed that this class is quite difficult to develop, and it was difficult to find work with this class. And Henry told about his relative that he had changed more than 7 jobs and now works as a monk. In the future he will become an abbot. Will really didn't want to become a monk or something like that, but the scholars were not in great demand, and the work was mainly with the public, and there were few universities. The hero thought that it would be nice to contact a university professor who might help Will with the further decision of his fate. After that, Will's friends invited him to have a snack together, but the hero had a terrible headache, and he refused. The city was big. News was heard from everywhere about what was happening in the world. Suddenly, my head ached sharply. Apparently the genes began to make themselves felt. The first ability appeared, which improved perception, and Will began to feel a strange sensation around him. He felt everything that was happening in the cafe, the location of things, and the number of visitors. I could even feel how many people were in the room, but it was difficult to see small things. No matter how much Will tried, he couldn't do it. Apparently this was the limit of what he could see. Suddenly, the hero felt a strange feeling that he had not experienced before, as if someone was watching him. The 3 people kept their distance from the hero, and perhaps they were from the Dawn Redemption organization. Thoughts of calling the police crept into my head, but it might only get worse. And then our hero thought about the professor and the business card that the girl gave just in case. A meeting was held in one of the high-rise buildings of the city of Boston, where the commander of the officers of the mayor's office talked about the importance of student reports. Professor Grace was given the floor to speak, and she asked a few questions to Director Hayden. She told me about a student named Will, that he was asking for help. Someone was following him. The commander assigned this problem to the director of the Secret Service Hayden. He replied that everything would be fine, and that those whom the student suspects are people sent by our Secret Service. Professor Grace didn't understand why it was necessary to send 3 people for the sake of one polymath. Director Hayden was surprised, because they sent only 2 agents to the case. Perhaps the third person was just a stalker from the organization Redemption of Dawn. And although the professor flared up, but the director calmed her down, saying that 2 employees would be quite enough. Grace didn't understand why the Secret Service employees were so negligent about their work, because students could get hurt. The chairman of the admissions committee of the university said that the polymath would be a good bait and there was nothing to worry about losses. Moreover, this order was given by the commander of the officers of the city hall himself, so everyone fell silent. And although the professor continued to disagree with this plan, the commander explained that this way they could catch the members of the Dawn Redemption organization. Even if the bait died, they could still get useful information about the enemy and ensure the safety of many people. Upset, Grace left the meeting, saying she had some things to do. The chairman of the admissions committee, Nolan, tried to stop the professor so as not to disrupt the plan. The commander said that he was letting the professor go, so long as she did not reveal the plan and did not interfere. After a while, a message came from the girl that 3 people were following Will, 2 of whom were agents who would protect him, and one of them could be dangerous. Will thought that if they knew about the danger that threatened him and did not act, then he was a bait. Calming down a little, the hero went into a diner and ordered sweet tea with sweet potatoes and milk. The pursuers did not want to lag behind the goal in any way and followed the hero on his heels. When the strange man approached, Will threw a hot drink on his face. The strange type's face was burned, but he did not retreat and attacked his target with lightning speed. From a sharp blow of the enemy, the hero was slammed into the shop window. The first thing that came to mind was that the genes of this type were located in the legs, so his kick was very strong. But after that, a serious panic arose. People fled in fear. The enemy was strong and was not afraid of the agents sent to protect him, nor of Will himself. Will was in a lot of pain and there was nothing nothing he could do about it. His strength left him slowly, his eyes closed until the hero eventually lost consciousness. Having presented himself in front of his astral body, our hero was convinced that 14 light points were indeed his awakened genes. The gray dots on the astral body were not awakened, but basic. The hero saw a stream of energy emanating from the stomach and spreading throughout the body. After Will tried to influence his astral body, he suddenly had a fever in his hand. This meant that by acting on the right points, it was possible to redirect the flow of energy. While our hero was unconscious, the pursuer Suddenly, the hero felt a strange feeling that he had not experienced before, as if someone was watching him. Points. It was possible to redirect the flow of energy. While our hero was unconscious, the pursuer dealt with the agents. Suddenly Will woke up and came face to face with the enemy. Confidence and strength were read in his eyes. The blow energy. While our hero was unconscious, the pursuer dealt with the agents. Suddenly Will woke up and came face to face with the enemy. Confidence and strength were read in his eyes. The blow that followed threw the opponent very far away, almost knocking him out for a moment. The agents who woke up after the scuffle quickly pinned down the pursuer. Sitting at the meeting, the professor was very worried about Will, because he did not respond to messages for a long time. Soon the management was informed about the results of the mission, and that with the help of the hero, the pursuer was caught. To which the commander replied with an order that from now on, every student and schoolboy should be monitored. The commander was furious that now all the townspeople know about the kidnappings by the Dawn Redemption Organization. Since the attacker had rank F, 2 agents failed to deal with him, and the victim is currently in the interrogation room. Perhaps the agents had badly beaten the pursuer, and therefore the student managed to lay him down. The next thing people saw when they entered the room was that the hero was eating buns on both cheeks. Although this ability was very strong, it also required a large amount of energy, so it should not be abused. Will was sure that he should not reveal his abilities, because he could end up on the surgical table for research. The hero said that he received a message from Professor Grace, then he assumed that one of them was a bad person. Hayden thought it was Professor Grace who blabbed, but the guy turned out to be savvy and coped with the situation. Will was told to sign a confidentiality agreement, and as a reward for helping to catch a member of a criminal gang, they are ready to give him 9,000 in cash and assign 6 points. Before Director Hayden left, the hero asked if he would still be used as bait. The director said that this plan was created in order to catch an enemy agent of the Redemption of Dawn organization. Therefore, it was decided to create a secret service to solve the issue of abductions of gifted people. Soon our hero was released, and he already called the professor to inform about the application for admission to the University of Genetic Evolution. William told Professor Grace that the director of the secret service was going to continue using him as bait. Therefore, our hero needs to become strong as soon as possible, because there are even more dangers ahead of him than there were recently. 3 days later, I received a letter of enrollment from the university, which occupies the first place in the association. During these 3 days, our hero exhausted all his strength to open another ability, even fainted several times. But the worst thing is that the training did not have any effect, and the right hand also became more sensitive. In this situation, it is very difficult to become strong, which is why it was necessary to enroll in the university that Professor Grace advised. His father warned Will that he should keep himself in hand and not overexert himself, otherwise the body would be exhausted and it would only get worse. Since Will was already an adult, his parents prepared a gift for a better job at the university, namely energy capsules. These were A-rank capsules, an important gene supplement to increase strength. 1 F-rank capsule costs $10, 1 A-rank capsule costs $500. Parents were very worried about Will. In the eyes of the hero, the eyes read care and happiness that he has close people who worry about him and care. In his spare time, our hero practiced with the astral body, although it was sometimes painful and took a lot of energy. After training, capsules were taken to restore energy, but mental strength was difficult to replenish, so it was necessary to train consciousness. After a while, the training bore fruit. Will turned from a weakling into a relief guy, which made his parents happy. Soon the hero was able to awaken gene points in 2 places, in the left leg and in the brain. It seems that some parts of the body influenced each other. The fingers of his hands also became stronger, so Will thought about combat techniques, but so far it has not worked out very well with throwing cards. But small round objects were best suited for the role of throwing at targets. If you used a metal ball, it turned into a formidable weapon, and now you could not worry about your own safety. A crowd of people gathered on the square. Everyone came to see off new young geniuses to a bright future, and Will's parents are no exception. They were very worried about letting our hero go into adulthood, but there was was nothing to worry about, because there were loyal friends nearby who would help out if anything happened. Will told Henry that Lucas went to another university on his mother's advice, because university offered many advantages and opportunities. The only thing Henry was worried about was that after this university he had to go to the advanced troops, and after all, 20 advanced troops died. Will reassured his friend, saying that their big guy would not disappear so easily, so there was no need to worry about him. There was a loud message that the cars will be leaving soon, and we need to hurry up. Henry was telling his plans for the future, and how he wants to have an affair with the first beauty of the university. The ride was not going very smoothly, and Will had time to quarrel with other passengers. It's good that the fight didn't happen, and Isaac from the Department of Education, who was an escort for students, came to the rescue. Among the other passengers was Dylan, who awakened 16 genes during a single test, which promised him great strength and a great future. There was also a talented girl, Jacqueline. She was both beautiful and strong, perfect balance. Another beauty who came on board was Professor Grace, who was also an escort, and so a lot of cars began to leave. There were quite a lot of them, so it was quite noisy outside. One of the soldiers explained to the commander that the most dangerous thing that could happen was an ambush, so he suggested to the commander to choose the route that the column would take. There were about 100 cars in the convoy, and it was quite difficult to find a car with students, but there was still a risk of an attack. The commander gave the order to prioritize car 3. If the enemy cannot capture the students, he will immediately kill all the soldiers. Wildlife outside the window promised many dangers and attracted tourists. Our hero was also pleasantly surprised by the local fauna that stretched outside the car window. The attendant informed all the students that in 30 minutes we would reach the first supply point. All students were strictly forbidden to approach the walls, otherwise the soldiers could kill the unwary. Warships were flying in the air, patrolling their marked zone, and if anything, they were ready to take the fight. Passengers were being unloaded on the ground, which was controlled by the military. It turns out that a military base served as a transshipment point, and at first glance it was clear that it was not safe here. Since there was little time to stop, most of the guys ran to relieve themselves. There was a strange noise in one of the booths, so with the help of his abilities, our hero decided to find out who it was. This person turned out to be the teacher Isaac, who apparently did something suspicious in the toilet. Will immediately informed the military about his suspicions about the accompanying teacher, but the military did not believe the words of the hero, saying that it was necessary to watch fewer films. The message sounded loudly that the cars were leaving and everyone should take their seats. And of course the teacher scolded Will for being late, because everyone was waiting for him alone. Although the teacher Isaac was hiding something, but it was necessary to continue on the way. Will could not reveal his suspicions to the soldiers in any way, because it is not known who else was in collusion with the enemy. Therefore, only one idea came, to tell Grace's teacher everything, and the reason to talk to her was questions about the hidden gene. And of course, the entire male half of the students were shocked, because everyone could only watch and idolize the professor. On the phone, Will informed Professor Grace about the suspicious actions of the teacher, that a bug might be hidden in his mouth. At the same hour, Grace jumped to her feet and directed her forces at Isaac, saying that she needed to check his mouth. Soldiers jumped up next, wondering what was going on between the teachers, but Grace immediately calmed them down and told them to sit down in their place. Teachers put Isaac on the floor and twisted his hands, although he struggled, insulting Grace about all sorts of consequences, but Professor Grace was adamant. Iron prostheses were found in the suspect's mouth, in which Professor Grace recognized a magnetized tantalum transmitter. The equipment is extremely rare and used to bypass the usual protection. Giggling nervously, Isaac didn't think he would be discovered so quickly, but now everyone was under attack. While the commander was discussing his plans with his subordinate, a message came from car number 3 that they were changing course. Grace informed the top management that an enemy spy had been caught in car number 3 and there might be a trap ahead. Therefore, they are changing course and will act according to circumstances. The leadership did not have time to do anything. Enemy spy had been caught in car number 3 and there might be a trap ahead. Therefore, they are changing course and will act according to circumstances. The leadership did not have time to do anything, and enemy shells were already approaching towards the convoy. Several cars were blown up. There were dead among the crew, which led to panic. Professor Grace commanded that everyone should duck down and quickly leave the car, while the commander ordered the soldiers to launch projectiles with electromagnetic interference and guided mines, since the enemies had pulse guns. A fierce battle began. The enemies attacked suddenly, and there were many of them, but among some students, most were undercover soldiers, so everything was ready for an emergency. A rumble was heard underground and spikes appeared, which took the lives of several soldiers. Professor Grace explained that this was a hidden type owner, a gradually modified B-rank genetic mutant whose attack radius was limited. Huge spikes pierced through the car and the soldiers. Morale was undermined, and there were more and more victims. The commander rushed into battle to stop the man with spikes, resulting in the death of an enemy soldier. A lot of enemies rushed at the commander to stop him and buy time for the enemy commander. It was enough to counterattack ordinary soldiers and break their ranks. In order to shut up the teacher, who turned out to be an enemy spy, Professor Grace trampled Isaac's head into the ground. In order to calm the students, Grace said that there are other teachers besides her, and they will not let anyone offend. During the battle, Teacher Grace was also with a hidden type, so her strength was undeniably great and intimidating. The metal balls held by the teacher instantly pierced the flesh of the animals and caused a fatal outcome to everyone. There were also many super soldiers among the enemies who sought to kill the military and capture students, but Professor Grace did not allow this to be done, protecting her friends in every possible way with the forces of a hidden type. After a deafening whistle, birds appeared in the sky. Birds rapidly descended to the ground, attacking defenders and students. Cries for help were heard from everywhere. Every minute someone was dying or seriously injured. After another scream, Will saw that an animal was rushing at one of the girls, wanting to tear human flesh into pieces. It's good that our hero has prepared and trained in advance to be able to stand up for himself. The metal ball released by Will went right through the monster, killing it in one touch. Seeing this, another monster rushed at our hero, and it's good that Henry arrived in time, covering his friend with a shield. Unfortunately, the shield was not designed for such a strong monster, so it could not withstand the impact and broke. After such a blow, Henry was lying unconscious, and Will realized that things were bad, so he immediately released the next ball into the monster. The beast did not hesitate to rush into battle again, but plants appeared from the ground that bound the monster. This ability belonged to that smart and beautiful girl Jacqueline. If it wasn't for her, then there wouldn't be a wet spot left of our hero. While Jacqueline was distracting the beast, Will managed to shoot an enemy sniper who was hiding in a safe shelter. As soon as the sniper shooting subsided, Professor Grace went into battle, who with her powerful ability eliminated the remaining enemy forces hiding in the forest. Having escaped from the bonds, the monster became enraged because his plan had failed, and now he was rushing at full speed at our hero, ready to tear a weak person to shreds. The next moment, the beast fell, wondering what had happened. A slight pain pierced him in the area of the head. The animals were running everywhere, fleeing and hiding from the murderous creature that exterminates everyone who does not like it. Aerial vehicles appeared from the air, which did not spare the invaders, killing everyone who dared to attack their friends. The enemy fled from the battlefield, but the teacher was already exhausted and collapsed to the ground. Will picked her up without hesitation, thereby saving her from a lot of injuries. The commander ordered the rescue of the wounded and the restoration of the fortification. No harassment was allowed. On one of the hospital beds, Henry woke up, whom Will had already met, telling him that everything was over. The best friend said that the opponents retreated as soon as reinforcements arrived, so there were not so many casualties. Professor Grace played a big role, minimizing the damage, because even so, 15 soldiers and 4 students were killed in a few minutes. Jacqueline came into the room and said that Grace's teacher had woken up, and she called our hero to her. After chatting with the students for a while, Grace asked to be taken to the commander to talk about past events. Meanwhile, the traitor was already interrogated about his accomplices by beating them with electric batons in every possible way. Grace came in with the students and asked the commander how the interrogation was going and what they had learned. The commander said that this spy was well prepared, no drugs and torture worked, and checking his personal home and his belongings did not give any results. This traitor will be sent to a military court, and the evidence of his collusion in the attack of opponents on the convoy has been destroyed, since now the transmitter is broken. Since there could be more attacks in the future, Professor Grace recommended that the spy be interrogated as best as possible, even if it would be necessary to use unconventional torture. No matter how the bound teacher pleaded, Grace was unshakable and used inhuman torture with increasing force. The next moment, the commander killed the spy in front of everyone, telling the professor not to take on this heavy burden. The teacher told the children that the real world is different from the world they used to know. The current world is full of lies and deception, in which enemies are everywhere, so you need to work hard to survive in the Gene era. Now, for security reasons, the convoy was escorted by air forces to avoid casualties and attacks on students. And yesterday's guy, who controlled the earth, almost single-handedly destroyed the entire convoy, and even the commander could not stop him. The teacher said that Jacqueline was very lucky. If there was no vegetation around, then her hidden type of plant and radiation management might not work. The guys chatted merrily, asking each other about hidden genes and ranks, and, of course, the teacher did not stay away either. Grace revealed her secret. She was a gradually changed C rank, which the guys were very surprised, because you don't often meet such people among professors. Grace told the students that no matter what abilities they acquired in the future, in no case should they reveal them to others, otherwise they will have to pay with their blood. While the guys were chatting peacefully, a view of the city opened outside the window, which meant that the trip was about to end. The capital was beautiful and promising, especially many were attracted by aerial skates, which cost the owners a tidy sum. Upon arrival, the guys were met by 2 nurses who took Henry to the hospital to recover his injuries. After arriving in the capital, our hero's first thought was about restoring the training regime. In tomorrow's test, Will had to get a mark not lower than C, because the reward was very tempting, namely all kinds of energy capsules and muscle growth drugs. Each supplement seriously hit the wallet, so it was necessary to try hard on the tests. To get a rank C, it was necessary to have at least 20 gene points, and at this stage our hero lacked only 2, so it was decided to train his left hand as well. Exhausted after training, Will slept until the morning, and in the morning someone rang his doorbell. Professor Grace came into the room, turned the sheet of paper upside down and asked to concentrate on it so that Will could read the text. The doors opened and senior student Aaron, who was responsible for the newcomers who arrived, looked into the room. The picture he saw was quite intriguing, so he quickly left the room so as not to distract the guys for nothing. Professor Grace advised our guy not to reveal his full strength during the test, even if there was every chance of getting a rank C. The skill that Will possessed, telepathy, could interest people to use our hero to spy on someone. Since our guy had a hidden type, he automatically got into the faculty under the supervision of Professor Grace. The professor handed over the tablet and asked to sign that our hero helped in combat conditions, for which he will be rewarded. After receiving the signature, Grace advised to go take the test with Aaron, and she left on business. Aaron was very surprised that the Ice Queen and the goddess of the faculty were in the same room with the newcomer, so he immediately began to ask for details. And even though Will told the truth, Aaron still continued to fantasize and ask our guy about the secret of attracting the Ice Queen. Therefore, in order to avoid unnecessary rumors from the elder, our hero made a bet with him that if Aaron dodged the metal ball, Will would tell his secret. Aaron was not against making a bet because he was confident in his abilities, namely having a super reaction of 0.01 seconds in super speed, so he could easily win this bet. Dodging one metal ball, Aaron did not expect that there would be another one. It turned out that our hero cheated and divided the ball into 2 parts. One distracted the elder, and the second touched his cheek. After seeing our hero to the test center, Aaron went about his business, saying that he would then take Will to the next test site. In the office, they told that Will had awakened 20 gene base points, and now he can pass for a low C rank. But if there are no clear abilities, then the assessment will be reduced to a high D rank. Then our guy was sent to be tested by a special device for telepathy tests, and if there were good results, they could assign an average C rank. When testing for telepathy, it was important to control your distance in order to get a good grade on the average C rank. The inspector immediately explained that you need to concentrate on the box and clearly feel what object was inside and describe it. Thanks to the training, the distance for telepathy increased from 3 meters to 4 meters, but Will hit his real results, as Professor Grace advised. The inspector introduced himself as Professor Neist, Associate Professor of the Institute of Hidden, Faculty of Mental Telepathy, and invited our hero to transfer to them, since Will had good abilities. Although our guy refused, but the professor insisted on his own, and even offered a reward for gifted students in the form of a special recruitment quota. Will thought about the professor's suggestion, because he mentioned that it would be possible to increase his rank in a year, and this would significantly help reduce the burden on his family and help him in the future. But since our hero had a hidden type like Professor Grace, his strength could be much greater if he developed this direction. And even though the elder egged Will onto this adventure, our hero insisted on refusing. Anyway, everything is in the hands of the student, so it's better to think carefully before making a final choice, because all this is voluntary. We'll ask Aaron's opinion about the promotion for good grades. Aaron was surprised that the newcomer was trying to compete with him in abilities and grades. When our hero was standing in line for the next test, the bracelet beeped and issued a bunch of new notifications. But what worried Will more was the noise coming from people who were rushing somewhere, scattering others in their path. It turned out that this big guy was with the F rank, and the people next to him, his henchmen, carrying out his orders. The system was built in such a way that people with high ranks had superiority over low ones, and if a low rank interfered with a high one, then such a person could be arrested and convicted. Therefore, in a university where all students have F rank credentials, a person with E rank credentials became a god, not to mention an average rank. Will didn't like such actions, because it didn't look human to use violence to circumvent the rules for his own benefit. And, of course, this big guy did not bypass our hero, saying something about powers and threatening consequences if Will does not miss him. But our guy was not timid, so he was not going to miss such an impudent person. The next blow to the balls knocked out the brute, and he bowed to our hero, and the people around were very surprised that someone rebuffed in such a situation. The henchmen immediately rushed for their commander, but at the same moment they were already lying on the floor writhing in pain. As it turned out, this bully dick was the elite among the freshmen of this year's Transcendent Institute. The crowd of onlookers was very surprised that someone was able to fight back against the impudence. So many filmed this incident. There have already been rumors about our hero on the web, but the worst is yet to come, because this bully could complain where necessary and create even more problems for Will. Aaron, though, was for our guy, but the people from the discipline department could issue a punishment, even if it was self-defense, because Will was not injured in the fight. Aaron explained that the worst punishment is deduction and compensation for medical expenses. After reading all the messages that came to him on the messenger, the cheeky smile did not fall off Will's face, because the messages talked about all the awards in the past incident with a spy and an attack on a convoy. Although Dick was not aimed at destroying someone's future, but such an incident should have an explanation. Therefore, the bully asked to kneel down and apologize publicly for what he had done, and then to compensate each member of the group for damages in the amount of $1,400. Our hero was grateful that a new friend stood up for him, but what was used to solving his problems on his own. At the same moment, the Department of Discipline approached, which Dick was very happy about, because he knew who paid the most for their actions. Since our guys started a fight and violated a number of rules of the institute, they were going to be sent to the department and questioned, as well as check the CCTV cameras to restore events. The big guy said that he had a number of privileges, namely rank E, that he had nothing to do with the fight, and this guy beat him up for nothing. Everyone was surprised that our hero has D rank privileges, because it takes a huge amount of points. All the man from the department said was that Will needed to write a report on what had happened, and in the meantime, they were taking the others with them. Our guy passed the following tests without any problems. Even the teachers began to take care of Will, thinking that he was a descendant of the hero. And that's how our hero received an assessment of the average C rank, the Institute of the Hidden Type, the Faculty of Erudition. Our hero was popularly nicknamed Soy Superman and was rumored to be a descendant of the hero, which made Will even more furious. At the meeting, Grace's teacher explained that Will would soon get a pass and would be able to get to the training place much faster. And she called our guy not for his beautiful eyes, but for 3 good reasons. And the first thing that came was a letter of apology from the defense command of the mayor's office, which Will was not particularly happy about, because it was not himself who suffered first, but other students of the academy. The second reason was that from today our hero becomes an intern of the Research Institute 14, and will have to do some things that will be reported later. Also, as a bonus, an E-rank energy capsule was issued at the end of the month, which Will was glad of. Teacher Grace said that the most important thing for those who entered the Hidden Institute is mental strength, and even it is a genetic ability. After that, Grace took metal balls and launched them all over the room, continuing to talk about genetic abilities. On the walk, Will pondered Professor Grace's words for a long time, and it seems that she knew that Will had inner vision. Grace explained to Will that only a small number of genetically modified humans or gradually modified mutants are able to possess inner vision. Those who are in a state of hypersensitivity to gene base points can awaken a variety of abilities. To awaken the ability of insight, you need to have at least 8 interconnected gene base points, but in the Faculty of Vision, you can awaken 15 gene base points thanks to special training. In the early stages of the gene era, the awakening of basic genes was compared to luck, almost like a game of roulette. A type like Grace and Will had a better chance of discovering new genes than others, and the probability of this was 70%. Some reached 90%. It was not enough to awaken only one gene point. Only by formulating a series of chains of genetic abilities, one could get a huge space for development. Teacher Grace said that in addition to activating new genes, there are no special privileges in inner vision. After the lesson, Will met Aaron and they went to our hero's room together, telling each other how the day had gone. Aaron said that the big guy's family contacted his family and asked him to tell our hero that big problems can be reduced to small, and small ones to zero. Dick's family enjoys authority in the city, but there is nothing to worry about, because they will never get to the university. The elder explained to Will that he needed to be careful. If Dick's family had the opportunity to disturb Will, they would not miss such an opportunity. And if our hero wants to put pressure on Dick's family, then in the worst case they will be expelled, and otherwise they are separated by the fact that the department will take them under supervision. After a couple of minutes, Aaron handed a gold card to our hero, which had $55,000 on it, and said that this was the sincerity of Aaron's family. On this beautiful note, the friend said goodbye and Aaron went about his business. After Will took the map, he remembered that Professor Grace had given him material to study and tasked to upgrade his skills. Moving away from dreams of superpowers, our guy sat down for training, which were prescribed in the training material. But as luck would have it, someone began to distract our hero from an important matter, so Will's thoughts were vague and not collected. At the same time, Dick got a call and was informed that all the problems had been settled, and it would be possible to forget about the deduction and supervision. As it turned out, it was his family who wanted Dick to become independent and find his place in life. But friends do not intend to leave everything like that. They wanted to take revenge on the offender for the last incident. So they came up with a plan to make all the guys from the Transcendent Institute hate Will and make him walk with his head down. On the way from the store, our hero chewed a bun and read the news for today in parallel. There was quite a lot of hate under some posts, so our hero got the idea that someone had set it up. And although Will was very upset, but the opening ceremony was waiting for him ahead, so there was no time to deal with haters. Axel, rector of the University of Genetic Evolution, delivered a fiery speech at the ceremony. At the click of the rector's fingers, lightning sparks appeared in the sky, which emitted not only a bright light, but also a deafening ringing, so that most of the students covered their ears. But here's the bad luck: as the end of the world appeared, it disappeared at the same moment, so everyone was stunned by what they saw. A silhouette of a man in a raincoat appeared in the sky, so all eyes were fixed on the mysterious person. The silhouette immediately descended from heaven to earth and introduced himself as Vice Rector Giovanni, but most students perceived him as Superman. Finally, Rector Axel said that everything is possible for genetically modified people, which all the students were only happy about. Anyway, after these words, we'll imagine how high you can climb by overcoming yourself. Sometime later, a lot of students sat in a large auditorium and listened attentively to the teacher. And the teacher was a certain Emmanuel, who was a professor at the University of Genetic Evolution and deputy dean. Professor Emmanuel said that the horn they see on his head is a consequence of a mistake during training, and if they want the same, then you can share couples. I wouldn't want something like that to happen to his beautiful face, Willie. And while the assistants were handing out teaching materials, the professor began a story about precautions and dangers on his pairs. And the first task was to train spiritual power, which will help extremely rare material in this bottle. The professor made a face and strained with all his strength, and as a result, the material in the bottle shifted thanks to the spiritual power of Emmanuel. After the following explanations of the teacher how to influence the material in the bottle, an explosion thundered in the hall. Our hero did not calculate the strength and injured himself, which made the teacher worry, who bandaged his arm. Emmanuel was surprised by Will's talent and strength, so he showed great interest in our guy, saying that instead of 5 grams of stones, the student would need about 20. Without hesitation, teacher Emmanuel informed our guy that he was ready to apply for a special quota so that Will's abilities would develop even more in his exceptional type. But this requires the consent of our hero, which will refuse to Emmanuel, because he trusted Professor Grace's curatorship most of all. Despite the refusal, Professor Emmanuel offered our guy several methods of low-ranking training for an exceptional type. Whatever it was, but I had to go to a practical lesson, so there was no time to dream about improving my abilities. The audience has already heard rumors about our hero Soy Superman, about his talent, and how the teachers looked at him. An assistant was invited to the lesson as an assistant to help the teacher, whose name was Lorenzo. He was an E-rank and was a freshman of the speed class of the Transcendent type, who had discovered 3 chains of genetic abilities. Shocked students began to whisper, and some were envious of such a quick result of the freshman. The teacher decided to show the most important disadvantage of the hidden type, and for this a volunteer among the students was needed. The assistant announced that he wanted to spar with our hero, to which Will was very stunned, because he wanted today to be quiet and peaceful. And although the teacher Emmanuel said that this was a voluntary matter, but Lorenzo insisted on a strong student, unless of course he was a coward. The students were unhappy that they were being treated so badly by their faculty, so they were all for Will to smash this upstart. But instead of our guy, another student got up, accepting Lorenzo's challenge in sparring. The student introduced himself as Kevin, the owner of 2 chains of genetic abilities of an exceptional type. Many eyes immediately turned to the freshman, whom many recognized as a genius of their faculty. After all the parties agreed to the sparring, the teacher pressed the remote control button, and an arena appeared, with a transparent dome so that that everyone could watch the fight. While the teacher was instructing the students, they were warming up and preparing for a battle with each other in the arena. Kevin didn't have time to tell about his fiery ability, as Lorenzo appeared beside him with lightning speed. And since the student was rather slow compared to the assistant, Kevin took the first blow, unable to react in time. Shouts, gasps and gasps were heard all over the hall from everywhere, which were made by the astonished students watching the battle. With the next small explosion, Teacher Emmanuel managed to calm the shocked students. A few minutes later, Lorenzo towered over Kevin, holding his throat with his hand, pinning him to the floor. In the next duel, the assistant gave a head start to the student, which Kevin took advantage of by moving away a long distance to protect himself from Lorenzo's quick attack. The assistant praised the student for his resourcefulness, but Kevin still lost in the second round. After the fight, Emmanuel's teacher sent Kevin to rest, and he began to talk about hard work on his mistakes and the development of his abilities. One victory wasn't enough for Lorenz, so he asked the teacher to have Will fight him in the arena. Their gazes crossed, as if each of them was ready to trample on each other, using all their strength to the maximum. When our hero passed by Kevin, he explained that you need to keep your distance and hit your left leg, as it is weak. While Will was discussing how to defeat the enemy, Lorenzo suggested that our hero record their fight on video, but it's a good idea to then evaluate each other's movements and improve the quality of the fight. As soon as the command to start the fight sounded, Lorenzo made a lightning lunge towards Will, but the crystal that appeared did not allow him to get close to our hero. The attacker did not expect that our guy could create objects with the help of spiritual power. This caused a shock to Lorenzo. The next high-speed lunge was a kick to prevent Will from using his strength. Twisting the hero's right arm, Lorenzo delivered a crushing blow to the head in order to knock out his opponent with one blow. The next attack was difficult to read, because the attacker was moving so chaotically that it was difficult to hit him. Despite the fact that Will could see all of Lorenzo's movements using telepathy, it was difficult to keep up with his reaction. The attacker assumed about the next attack of our hero, and managed to dodge at the right moment. But as it turned out, Will could not only shoot crystals, but also control them in motion, which was a surprise for the assistant. Our hero could not repel the next flurry of lightning attacks, and therefore was broken under the onslaught of the attacker. It's good that the teacher managed to stop Lorenzo so that he wouldn't cause serious injuries to Will, because this is a training fight, not a real one. The students who were watching the course of the fight were angry that the contest turned into a beating, because it was unfair to the newcomer. Then Lorenzo explained to the crowd that it was just a demonstration fight, because those who came here to study in the future will face those who were tens or even hundreds of times stronger than them. In the next round, the assistant was going to use all his strength to knock our guy down, so there was no mercy to be expected. Since now it was a real combat training, Teacher Emmanuel gave Will the go-ahead to use all his abilities. For his Superman soy ability, metal balls were required, which our hero asked his classmates for. A few minutes later, Jacqueline presented her friend's 3D necklace to our boyfriend as a help. Since Lorenzo's speed is very high, and there is a high probability that he will dodge the balls, then we need to find a way to increase the throwing speed. After the start of the second duel, Will attack Lorenzo with spiritual stones, which he easily repelled. Lorenzo needed to get out of the barrage of spiritual stones, because if he kept dodging, they would eventually hit him. The assistant made a decision and made a U-turn, jumping up, which opened up a chance for Will to get an accurate hit, because it was difficult to dodge in the air. Our student's next attack was no longer spiritual stones, but metal ones, so Lorenz had no chance to get up after such a blow. The entire male half of the hall tensed nervously, as if feeling all the pain that Lorenzo had experienced. The students rejoiced and were happy that their classmate managed to defeat the impudent in a real fight. But the assistant already needed medical help, but already from Emmanuel's teacher. The doctors explained that there were no serious bruises, but they would have to have surgery on their legs, and perhaps it would leave consequences. The teacher said that first of all it was necessary to take care of the victim, and he would write a report on what happened later. If Will hadn't hurt Lorenzo, he could have been on a stretcher instead. Teacher Emmanuel asked the students not to attach special importance to today's incident, and for the next 3 months, students will be protected by the university. But after this period, any serious injuries will become a daily routine. After all that had happened, it was a pleasure for Will to have a good rest in his room, since today was a very busy day. A notification came from a roommate, in which the rules of living in the hostel were written. After a while, the roommate himself appeared, who was handsome and got along very badly with people. Our hero was seriously battered, so the senior said that it would be difficult for Will to hold out even with 3 months of protection from the university. Therefore, the neighbor gave his healing ointment, which he advised to apply when changing the bandage. The roommate explained that any university of genetic evolution encourages students to compete with each other, and their university is no exception. Those who prevailed in the competition received a large amount of resources for training, and every year there was a list of hundreds of the best students. The first place is dragons, and the top 10 are tigers. For each place, a separate reward was given in the form of various incentives and energy capsules. After 3 months, all freshmen will participate in the competition for the best. Every year students get seriously injured due to competitions. Some become disabled and are excluded, or even die. This is normal. And perhaps our hero has already become someone's target, so in order to survive, you will need to train hard. Within a year, Will had made enemies who would gladly repay him 100-fold. Then our hero began to study the educational material that Professor Emmanuel gave him. After getting out of the shower, our guy received a call from a friend who told us that a certain guy with the nickname Shot is forever creating horror by making posts with Will. And of course, our hero did not like such a hate with past fights, because all the posts were simplified and exposed him in a bad light. Using the number given by a friend, Will called a man named Adam and said that the posts he posted on the internet could cause misunderstanding. For correcting the post, the guy asked for $70,000 and laughed out loud, saying that it was a joke. Not having received a proper response from Adam, our guy began to think about how to get rid of the infection. When he came to the discipline department, Will said that he wanted to write a complaint against one person. Our guy informed a member of the department that someone was using the school's website for blackmail and extortion. The deputy director instructed his subordinate to block Adam's account, and the subsequent punishment will be imposed after the meeting. At the meeting of the University of Genetic Evolution, all the boiling problems concerning Will and Lorenzo were actively discussed. Wesley, the deputy dean of the Transcendent Institute, suggested punishing our guy for causing serious injuries to Lorenz. To which Austin, the vice dean of the Hidden Institute, replied that it was a regular combat training, and it was Lorenzo who provoked Will. But it was Teacher Emmanuel who felt the most guilty, because all the events of the duel between the students took place under his supervision. The rector told everyone that you are primarily teachers and should not conflict with each other, and are obliged to support all students. There was no end to the dispute, and everyone insisted on their own, so it was difficult to figure out what punishment should be given to whom. Everyone agreed that Emmanuel should take on the main share of responsibility and conduct educational conversations with the students. After the meeting, Deputy Director Kai entered the hall and provided a full report on the incident. The rector passed the report to Silas about Adam's blackmail and extortion towards the students, although Adam's number was blocked. But this will not stop him, because he has his own ways to continue working. There was a knock on the door, and the people who entered introduced themselves as people from the special department of the intelligence department of the Gene University. They said that an order was given to arrest Adam for money extortion and blackmail, so you need to go with them. Videos related to blackmail and extortion were deleted, and most of those who had income in this case burned out. According to an internal announcement, students learned that Emmanuel's teacher was removed from the post of deputy dean, and the cases of people who participated in blackmail and extortion will be transferred to the judicial authorities. After intensive training, we'll discover the last 36th base point, when an ordinary person would have done the same result in 6 months. Although the spiritual power did not increase much, but now it was difficult to break the spiritual cone of our hero. With the help of telepathy, you can now not only close your eyes and see your room, but you can also look through the walls. The presence of our guy did not go unnoticed, and the roommate was furious about what had happened. Although Will apologized, but the senior was surprised that our guy exceeded the mark of 4 meters with telepathy in 1 month. But next time, if our hero is not careful, then the roommate will definitely make a response. Matthew said that he has not only genetic abilities, but also the ancient martial art lion's roar, capable of resisting telepathy. Will was very surprised that there are such martial arts that can be adjusted to the gene points, so he asked the elder for his book to also learn a little about his art. Matthew said he would share his book, but in the future Will can't go into his room and spy on him, to which our guy agreed. After reading a ton of books for a long time, our guy found out that meditation is best suited for pumping his abilities. While our hero was thinking about how to use meditation correctly, Will was approached by his classmate and invited to have lunch in the dining room together. Some guys heard the conversation about lunch and also wanted to join the meal. Very cool guys came to the audience, namely third-year students of the speed class, who wanted to challenge Will to a duel. The guys explained that they are not like Lorenzo and do not want enmity, so they want to fight with our hero to hone their martial arts. A training building was offered as a platform for combat, and for safety they can call a teacher on duty and also pay our hero from above. Although Will refused even for money, but after the guys offered an earring capsule as payment, the girl offered to give give our guy 3 E-rank capsules for 3 fights, and the guy next to her 4 capsules for 4 exits. The duel took place in the 4th combat hall of the training building, which the university built for a lot of money, and it can withstand the fire of thermal and energy weapons. The teacher warned the participants that this is just a training match, and the main thing is not to injure each other, especially Will. Before starting the fight, Evan told his friends to watch the fight carefully, because they will go next. After studying the last fight from the video, the guys realized that they needed to shorten the distance with Will as soon as possible, and not fall for his tricks. At the same moment, the attacker collided with a spiritual barrier in front of him. Our guy didn't expect that the opponent would be so strong that he could break through the spiritual shield with his fist. Although the opponent broke through the shield with his strength, but behind the first layer of the shield there was a second, much stronger than the first. The teacher who came to the rescue said that if there is no fracture, then you need to apply ice and use ointment, and if there is, then give an injection, and it should heal in 2 days. The teacher declared Will the winner, and our guy invited the next opponent for a duel. As a sign of friendship and good relations, Evan kept his word and gave Will the E-rank capsules. But bad luck, our hero forgot to clean up in the laboratory, so he hurried to finish unfinished business as soon as possible. After all the pressing matters in the laboratory, our hero smelled the smell of blood coming from the office. As it turned out, it was Professor Grace, who looked very shabby and covered in blood and abrasions. Our guy kept asking the professor about her condition, about her hands, wounds, and tired appearance. Professor Grace said that if our hero had not been shirking, he would have found this place long ago, and in the meantime, she is ready to show how she grew her lost limbs. There was a clone of the professor in the capsule, which Will could not have expected to see, and there were a lot of such capsules. Not all of them were used for medical purposes, but most of them were used for research, and Will's clones were also in this room. Our hero's DNA was obtained on the day Will received the pass, and only a few biological samples are required to analyze the complete genetic information. The teacher told our hero not to be scared when he sees his first 40 clones. A room opened up in front of our hero, where there were many capsules with clones exactly like Will. Our guy was surprised that the institute spends so many rare resources on students. Professor Grace said that their institute conducts a lot of genetic research in the direction of new genetic people. Now Will has to decide whether to join Professor Grace's direction or not. Our hero agreed, to which Grace said that she would let our hero into some details. In one of the capsules was the head of a queen bee, which belonged to an evolved species of bees, a black crown capable of controlling tens of thousands of worker bees. The teacher said that they tried to inject the spiritual gene data of the queen bee into the experimental body in order to get an increase in gene mutation. The queen bee also possesses a mental whip, which it uses to attack or kill worker bees. Since the method was simple and crude, the probability of genetic rejection was more than 90%. Grace explained that even if Will enters the clone's body, the pain will be hellish and will not be weakened in any way. The device connected the clone and the original with the help of spiritual energy, so all that was needed from our guy was to release the energy and see what happens next. The capsule opened, and a clone of Will fell out of it, whose body looked exactly like the original, and was also easily controlled, without causing any discomfort. The professor ordered our hero to go to the wall of the control room, find a through recess, and put his hand inside to get an injection. Throughout the entire experiment with the queen bee, Grace kept a record so as not to miss anything for reporting. Will felt dizzy and fell, and the professor recorded brain death 10 seconds later. After many attempts and many deaths of clones, the teacher offered a last attempt to inject, and after a series of failures, it turned out. But our guy was already exhausted, but he managed to increase his spiritual energy by 25%. Our guy said that as a result of the experiment, he adopted as many as 2 abilities, namely a chain of mental control and a mental whip. Our hero did not have time to rest after hard work, as the professor took him by the scruff of the neck and dragged him to do skill tests. It was a success, because not everyone could achieve an excellent result with less than 40 clones. The robot who was handing out drinks said that Will's pupils and heartbeat changed dramatically when our guy saw a clone of Grace, to which our hero blushed. The teacher explained that it was Asher, a special supercomputer of the research institute. As it turned out, this robot had an unhealthy habit of secret observations, and what Will was holding in his hands was just a shell, because the real body was in another place. Once our hero had the strength, Grace offered to conduct a small test of abilities for analysis. The teacher allowed to attack other parts of the body besides the head, but the ability was weak, since our hero lacked power in spiritual energy. I had to stop training because Will had little spiritual energy, so there was no point in conducting tests further. Grace said that everyone who experimented with clones received one ability, even the founder, but now this phenomenon needs to be documented. If it is possible to accurately determine the basic gene center of the chain of mental control, then the fruits of the erudition class will increase. For hard work, the teacher gave our hero a gift that looked like a keychain. As it turned out, it was a flying sword, which Will would be very happy about, because it could be controlled and launched up to 100 meters. Controlling the blade took a lot of strength from our guy, so teacher Grace recommended practicing more with him. Professor Grace told Will to pay attention to the individual moments associated with acceleration, deceleration, and turns. After all the events, a call rang, and Professor Grace was informed that she and Will needed to come to a meeting. Austin, the vice dean of the Hidden Institute, said that Professor Grace's research is not progressing, so she can give away the cloning equipment if she does not want her funding to stop. Teacher Austin explained that for the normal functioning of this institute, at least 50 million per year is needed. Looking at Will, he said that Grace had not worked alone before, but after a while some people left, and others betrayed her. The best and fastest way to help Professor Grace is to enter the top 10 of the best students in the Dragon and Tiger rankings. Teacher Grace came out of the room and asked where Teacher Austin had gone, to which Will replied that he had already left. Grace advised our hero to train more, use a flying sword, and not forget about the daily maintenance of the research laboratory. While our guy was thinking about the rating of the Dragon and Tigers, his friend crept up behind him, which scared Will a lot. Our hero had the idea that his friend would want to train with him, so he immediately suggested this idea to him. But his friend was not a weakling, and ranked 89th in the ranking among sophomores, so it was difficult to beat him. In the training hall, where our guys came, there was already a beautiful girl who turned out to be Aaron's girlfriend. Aaron told June that our hero has defeated a lot of opponents in the past and therefore will train with him now. But since June waited too long and she had no one to fight with, she challenged our hero to a duel. Will's friend explained that she ranks 32nd in the Dragon and Tiger rankings among sophomores. June attacked openly, without any tricks, and was able to break through the entire defense of our hero. Will appreciated that her speed, strength, and even skills were at a completely different level than the others, and this was the strength of the sophomore rankings. After all the barriers and all of Will's defenses were destroyed, our hero had no choice but to use his new ability. Aaron hurried to his girlfriend, but she was already unconscious and with a strange facial expression on her face, which greatly surprised our hero. Will began to make excuses that he did not know how to use his ability, so he immediately began to apologize for his act. After a while, June came to her senses and told our hero about the match between the students of the Indian Federation and the Star Districts of Korea. In the video, one of the students delivered a crushing blow to his opponent's throat, and he fell, writhing in pain in a terrible fit. Will was surprised at why people were treated so terribly at a university match, who, after such cruel receptions, remained crippled. Aaron said that even with teachers and proper equipment to protect students at the Dragon and Tiger competition, deaths happen. The person who seriously injured his opponent at the match was a talented university student in the Indian Federation and is in the top 10 of the Dragon and Tiger rankings among sophomores. Recently, universities have started exchanging students, and at one of these exchanges, one participant of the Federation knocked out the 6 best second-year students. June told Will to take a closer look at this exchange student, because maybe he also has mental attacks. The girl said that according to her teacher, there are only 2 ways to resist a mental attack. This is mental fortitude, hardening and strengthening of spiritual strength and mental defense. She suggested using Will's ability to strengthen her ability to resist mental attacks. Will thought that this kind of training can be brutal, but at the same time our hero lacks practical skills. But even so, our guy will help brother Aaron and June become stronger, so it was a mutual offer. The girl was already eager to fight in order to get stability as soon as possible, which would be useful not only for her, but also for her boyfriend Aaron. Since June was severely injured and exhausted, the guys agreed to continue the fight tomorrow. As it turned out, Matthew's third-year student was popular with girls, so many ladies were pining for his beauty. Along the way, our hero stumbled upon Matthew, his roommate, and told him that he had read all the books that he borrowed from him. As soon as Will heard where his friend was in a hurry, he immediately offered to go with him to a lecture on ancient martial arts. But since a special recommendation was needed for this official lecture, Matthew could not take our hero with him, and therefore our guy offered to do the cleaning for a friend for 2 weeks. The guys flew to the right place by car, the ticket of which cost a little $400,000, which was considered not cheap pleasures. Matthew explained to our hero that such money is a sky-high price for ordinary people, and for genetically modified people it is just a reward for 1 to 2 tasks. Obviously, the difficulties and dangers that you will have to face on missions are also unimaginably difficult for ordinary people. The auditorium was crowded, and while our heroes were looking for a place to sit, Matthew was talking about what would be at the lecture today. Matthew's friend was sitting at one one of the empty chairs, who had taken the best seats since 5 in the morning and, seeing her friend, was very glad that she had waited for him. The girl was shocked that her friend did not come alone and chose the place that Matthew offered him, and he himself would sit in the remaining empty seat. It was difficult to make a choice, but reluctantly, she decided that it was better to let her friend sit with a guy than to give him to the hungry wolves. After 30 minutes, the lecturer spoke about ancient Jin martial arts, namely about the energy field, which the old people called inner chi or true chi. The teacher said that everyone can try what he said, but not everyone will succeed, and therefore each student should act based on their capabilities. Matthew said that he was a real genius of geniuses, and therefore it took him only an hour to feel the chi energy. The people who came were surprised that Will pressed the button so quickly and thereby reported that he felt the chi energy, which means that he completed the lecturer's task. The lecturer's name was Weston, and at the moment he was resting in his favorite place after a lecture to students. The person who brought the children to teacher Weston said that Will felt the chi energy during the lecture. The teacher decided to see for himself what the guy is capable of, so he gave the task to demonstrate his chi energy. Matthew told the professor that he had not been engaged in teaching Will, but had given him only his books from which he was studying. Professor Weston offered our hero to join his association of ancient martial arts, but Will politely declined, because he already belongs to a school called the Gene Miracle. The teacher said that if our guy can open his place of concentration of power within 7 days and condense the mass inside the chi, then he will personally teach Will. At the end of the lecture and the meeting with Weston's teacher, Matthew was pleasantly surprised that our hero had learned so much today. After a while, Will received a message from Aaron about what happened to Grace's teacher and why she didn't answer the call. Our guy hurried to Professor Grace as soon as possible to ask about the duel between her and a man from the Indian delegation. Our hero was very worried about the professor because she is still weak and has suffered recently, and therefore he suggested that Grace refuse the duel. The teacher said that on a mission, an Indian student Gavin caught her by surprise when she had no strength left after killing the uterus and wounded her, and now he challenges her when she is wounded. Will was furious and said that one day in the future he would go out to an exchange duel himself and slap this Gavin in the neck so that he wouldn't say anything more about Grace's teacher. After meeting with the teacher, our guy met Aaron and his friend on the street, who provide specialized goods for students of their university. A friend handed our hero a bundle containing metal balls, for which Will was grateful and was ready to give the money, but the guy suggested one idea. The arena hosted a fight between Emmanuel's 83rd place and Riker's 92nd place, in which Riker won at the end of the fight, and now he has risen to 83rd place in the ranking. Aaron's friend said that Will's name will appear on the screen soon, so he advised to prepare for the competition properly. The crowd was shocked by what they saw, because on the sign of the guy who came on stage, it was written that our hero was ready to challenge the sophomores of the Dragon and Tigers rating. He is ready to offer 20 E-rank energy capsules to anyone who wins over him, with the condition that each subsequent participant must exceed the previous one. Our guy was a little surprised by the cunning of the seller, because he clearly knew how to attract the attention of the crowd with the help of hatred. Having entered the arena, our hero did not have time to properly introduce himself, as the first candidate for the fight came to him. The first opponent who came up against Will was a man with a rank of 94, and his name was Elliot, and he wielded a bat and well. A few seconds after the start of the fight, Elliot could not do anything with the power of our hero, and eventually lost. Elliot told his friends that you need to be careful with the balls, because they were moving at a strange angle and at high speed. Now this friend of Aaron began to shout into the megaphone that the prize money would rise with each next fight, so they are waiting for new participants. Theo entered the arena with the 29th rank, and it was no joke, because now the opponent looked really powerful and dangerous. Thanks to his unimaginable accuracy of the blow, Theo can reflect all of Will's balls that were launched in his direction. At one point, the student managed to escape from the dense onslaught of Will and try to strike a lightning strike at a weak spot, but our hero foresaw this and dodged, and then struck a mental attack on an opponent who had no chance to repel such an attack. Some guys immediately realized what had happened, and one of them was even willing to pay Will to train with him and develop endurance against mental attacks. One of the guys told the senior that he wanted to deal with the upstart so that no one else from the second year would be disgraced by the freshman. Lewis, who ranked 7th in the Dragon and Tiger rankings and had abilities of the Transcendent type, entered the arena. Will immediately realized that the fight would be difficult, because he was up against an archer, a sworn enemy of the Hidden type. While Will and Lewis were moving to a bigger arena to fully fight, some guys were tuning up the broadcast. The archer had a special way of moving, which stood out among the other participants of the Transcendent type. In one of the rooms, two people were discussing the upcoming fight and therefore became interested in the new participant. Austin told Axel that, apparently, experiments were conducted on this student to improve his abilities, because then he did not master the mental whip. The rector was surprised that the old businessman decided to raise new geniuses who would outshine the old ones with their abilities. Meanwhile, in the laboratory, Professor Grace was watching the duel, and the robot butler was serving sweets. While the rivals were exchanging phrases with each other, a bag flew into the arena, in which there were blunt arrows for the duel. The foreman told Lewis to be careful with Will, because tomorrow the archer has a fight with students from other universities, which he must attend. Aaron came up to the arena, and was unhappy that the elder pressed one, and forced the second to restrain himself. After the start command, the archer immediately climbed up to take a favorable position to attack his opponent. The archer's arrow immediately pierced one of Will's shields, and this indicated that Lewis did not occupy the 7th rank in vain. As it turned out, the archer was checking the reaction speed of our hero to choose the most suitable position. With each attack, they studied each other's weaknesses to identify weaknesses and take advantage. The archer had a significant advantage over Will, because even if our hero drove him into a dead end, Lewis easily got out of it by air. Our guy couldn't block the next arrow fired with a shield and couldn't repel it. Significant advantage. Archer was checking the reaction speed of our hero to choose the most suitable position. With each attack, they studied each other's weaknesses to identify weaknesses and take advantage. The archer had a significant advantage over Will, because even if our hero drove him into a dead end, Lewis easily got out of it by air. Our guy couldn't block the next arrow fired with a shield and couldn't repel it with balls, and that's why Lewis's attack hit him. The shot from the bow was so powerful that even the 4th-year students could not properly see what really happened. Lewis used a quick attack to shoot 3 arrows one after the other so that the first 2 arrows hit Will's spiritual power, thereby causing his 3rd silver ball to deflect and use it as a breakthrough. Although our guy got up, he didn't look important, because his rib hurt terribly, and it was difficult to continue the fight in this state. The wound in the rib was caused by the fact that Will did not use a flat shield to repel the attack, but an arc-shaped one, so only the rib was damaged. Lewis was surprised that after such an attack, our hero was able to stand up and can continue the fight. The crowd from the stands closely followed the course of the fight, subjecting each opponent to their criticism in order to predict the next step of each of the combatants in the arena. We can say that it was a warm-up to study each other, because the real fight between Lewis and Will is still ahead. The fight was heating up, and if the archer wanted to save his strength for tomorrow's exchange match, then we can say that he is a complete fool. Anyone could win, but for this it was necessary to break the deadlock and use their trump card. But if none of them break the deadlock, then this fight will be attrition, and then Lewis will be defeated because of the number of arrows. The next ball flew as much as 30 meters and almost hit the archer, who tried to stay at a distance from Will's abilities. But then the ball came back and shot Lewis, causing serious damage to the opponent's hand, so he could no longer continue the fight. During the fall, the senior managed to catch Lewis, so everything went well, and no one was seriously injured. Then the elder attacked Will with accusations, because he wounded Lewis, but our hero's friends came to the rescue and stood up for our guy. Owen accused Will that he has no sense of collective honor and has no idea how important Lewis is for tomorrow's fight with students from the Indian Federation. But Aaron stood up, saying that if our hero had used a flying sword instead of metal balls, then your guy would definitely not have been able to dodge. After another accusation from Owen, a flying sword flew up to him and hovered near his throat, saying that it was worth stopping empty accusations towards Will. Senior Aiden told Owen to end the argument and take Lewis to the medical center as soon as possible, and there he underwent an ultra-precise tendon surgery. Aiden admitted that Will is quite a strong opponent, and in the future he also wants to fight him. The elder thought that the archer's tendons were torn quite badly, so it would take at least 10 days to recover, so he suggested that Will take Lewis's place in tomorrow's competition. Will said that the reason he came to challenge the seniors today was to qualify for tomorrow's competition. Our guy will go on behalf of Grace's teacher and fight with the Indian student Gavin, since Grace's teacher is injured and it's hard for her to fight. Senior Aiden agreed to Will's terms, so he was ready to take care of the training side and close all of Will's questions if they appeared. After it was over, the first thing our guy did was approach Ethan, who had sold him metal balls earlier, and asked him to fix the broken one. But the merchant explained that the silver ball is made of tellurium alloy and it can be recycled as a material, but it costs some money. After calculating, he said that the entire repair would cost about $5,500, not counting his merits for today, and also told about the news that he had now been renamed from Soy Superman to Silver Sword. The news quickly spread across the internet, which really infuriated Will, because now he is called the Silver Sword. At the same time, in one of the rooms, the rector of the institute Axel and the deputy Dean Austin were discussing Will's appearance in tomorrow's competition as a temporary replacement. The rector said that Will is not decisive enough in his actions, and if he is not careful in tomorrow's match, he will seriously suffer. A meeting of students of the Indian Federation was held in one of the hotels of the University of Genetic Evolution. A standing person said that he received a list of students, in which 2 of them were replaced for tomorrow's participation. The first student to be replaced was a girl named June, who, according to the intelligence group, reached the 18th place in the Dragon and Tiger sophomore rankings this afternoon. According to the information, she is good at close combat. Her fighting style is characterized by active and brutal attacks, and it seems that she had experience fighting with masters of the hidden type. The second student to replace was introduced to a guy named Will, a freshman, a hidden type who posed the greatest threat. One of the Indian students said that this student will be a formidable opponent, and it is more difficult to cope with him than with the departed Lewis. The team began to actively discuss ways to fight and look for techniques for Will, as well as options for those who were most suitable or not suitable for fighting with him. Meanwhile, Professor Grace was showing recordings of the last fights of an Indian student with mental abilities. Teacher Grace was upset by Will's behavior and told him to stop doing good to the enemy because it harms him. The teacher showed the recordings of the fight where Will hit Lewis's bow twice, but the archer did not admit defeat even then. This suggests that the enemy knew that our hero was showing mercy and therefore used it openly. Grace said that because of the archer, 2 students became crippled over the past year and a half. In addition, several dozen students were seriously injured, and there were also 3 human deaths during the sweep. Will thought seriously about the teacher's words because the archer didn't care whether he restrained himself or not. After our hero left, Grace asked the robot how many clones were left and told him to prepare for Plan 37. The next morning, the 2 girls discussed how Will's wounds had healed, but after they saw him happily chatting with his friends, they realized that everything was fine. The girl attracted Will's attention and subsequently fed him her bun on the bench, and our hero did not mind. She suddenly asked our guy to take them to the inside of the arena because the outside is very far away and they can't see the match from it. Suddenly, a senior appeared and said that he would settle the issue in order to take the girls to the inner side of the arena, and also gave information about the students from the Indian Federation, their strengths and weaknesses. Aiden told Will to pay special attention to the Indian student Gavin because our hero will be the second participant against him. Our guy had only an hour and a half to think about the fight plan because the competition started at 9:30. The rector was told the bad news that 2 students from the Indian delegation became ill because they had stomach problems last night, so they had to be replaced. Upon hearing this, our hero immediately realized that the irreparable could happen, and all the pre-thought-out strategies would not work. The rector immediately realized that such news could put a team of students into a stupor, so he encouraged them, reminded them that such news should not make them doubt their abilities. But the guys were not timid, so everyone as one repeated after Will that they were not afraid of such difficulties. Axel told the guys important thoughts before the start of the match, namely that fear is not a weakness, but if he is not afraid, then others should not. And the third point was that their own lives would depend on their actions, which adults would try to preserve during the match. A lot of people gathered in the stands, anticipating the next fights between the best students from different institutes. To the left of the presenter was a second-year student of the Gene University, who has mental abilities under the name Gavin. To the right of the presenter was a second-year student named June, who has incredible strength and agility. The gong sounded about the beginning of the fight, which the crowd in the stands had been waiting for so long, pausing in anticipation of an epic battle and watching carefully every movement of the participants. The first attack was blocked by a participant from the Indian Institute, although the hidden type is not able to withstand a direct blow from the transcendent type. Since June sensed something was wrong, she immediately retreated to a safe distance to slowly check the distance of the hidden type attack. The next attack, a foreign student directed a lot of whips at June, but she withstood because she was training with Will. The girl realized that she had the advantage and rather shortened the distance to strike back at the foreign student, but unfortunately, her attack was blocked this time. Before June could figure it out, Gavin cut her arm with a sharp object that was on the end of his arm. With the next lunge, the girl repelled the alien's attack by kicking him in the arm, angering Gavin. The next action, the foreigner tripped and knocked June down, and then struck his sharp weapon into the girl's chest. The judges suspended the match and immediately called the medics to save the girl from imminent death as soon as possible. Before the nurses took the victim away, Aaron approached her, who heard from her something important that she noticed during the fight. Aaron told the guys that the foreigner has a mental attack in the form of a thread, more than 12 times per second. The maximum distance is 7 meters, and the strength of the last one is explosive. While the commander was thinking about what abilities the foreigner Gavin has, it was Will's turn. During a short rest, Gavin was approached by his teacher and told to be careful with the next opponent who had a flying sword. The foreigner asked his teacher about the ineffectiveness of his mental attacks against the next opponent. The teacher explained that Gavin had very weak mental skills because even the girl he was up against had a very good defense against his attacks. At the same time, university journalist Olivia was reporting straight from the arena and was going to interview one of the following participants. Will told the camera that his teacher Grace was seriously injured during the assignment, and since he is her only student, he feels obliged to respond to the provocation from the Indian team. After the announcement of the start of the fight, Will immediately began attacking the alien with metal balls, which were stopped by metal protection on his hands. The people watching the fight were very alarmed by the fact that after the start of the battle, active aggression on the part of our hero began. Olivia explained to her colleague that all the actions taking place are just a test of each other's strength. From Will's movements, it could be seen that he was accumulating power in the flying sword, rotating it around himself to trigger the action of centrifugal force. The alien's bracelets lit up purple, and the gene skeleton that appeared cut all the balls. The teacher explained to Gavin that when Will releases the flying sword, he needs to dodge slightly, because then the flying sword will not be able to return quickly, and this will be a chance for a counterattack. After a flurry of attacks that Gavin endured, Will still attacked his opponent with a flying sword, but missed as the foreigner dodged in time. The opponent used this window to get closer to our hero as quickly as possible and try to deliver a crushing blow. Gavin did not have time to enjoy his future victory, as a half of the ball flew from behind, which passed through the foreigner's head. The doctors were alarmed and pronounced a verdict that the wounded opponent would not survive, as they had touched his brain membrane. While the crowd was confused, Olivia explained to her colleague that Will had fooled everyone and that it was necessary not to underestimate the skills of our hero. Previously, everyone thought that the flying sword was Will's main trump card, so all attention was focused on him, but in fact, Will's final movement was a metal ball. It could be said that our hero had prepared this plan from the very beginning, and Gavin had no chance of winning against such an opponent. Scrolling through the tape through a special bracelet, Will realized that he had subscribers, of which there were a lot, about 10,000. The death of the student was very upset by the foreign teacher, who immediately warned the guys who they should pay attention to first. After the fight, one of the teachers approached Will and gave him 2 vials to recuperate, saying that our hero should not worry about anything, especially about the death of a person. The next gift from the teacher was a box with new metal balls inside, which Will liked very much. Julian entered the arena with water bottles on his sides. He looked spectacular and attracted a lot of attention. The teacher informed the head referee that Julian was in his 3rd year of study, so he could not participate in the match. To this, the student replied that he had an unfortunate incident in training, and for this reason he was absent for a whole year. The crowd in the stands was furious, constantly shouting something unintelligible, but Julian stood adamantly, as if he didn't hear anything. The person in charge of foreigners said that if the judge needs documents, they are ready to provide them, but it will take time. The teacher explained to Will that this Julian is good at skills such as ice shield, ice spikes and ice spear, and can also fight long battles. The chief judge said that the documents proving the foreigner's words were correct, so if one of the participants did not agree with the decision, then both participants would leave the arena and others would take their place. Will told the judge that they were taking the fight, and looked contemptuously, with a grin, at the foreign teacher, as if expressing that even this would not help them. The command sounded, and the duel began, in which the foreign student immediately poured water around him, turning it into large crystal ice spikes. The elder explained that in comparison with the transcendental type, which relies on physical indicators, the hidden type is more changeable and unpredictable. Will was forced to dodge, because all his attacks were blocked, and ice spikes were already flying at him, which were made from just a bottle of water. Our hero realized that the enemy uses mineral water to absorb moisture from the surrounding air. After another attack from Julian, Will's balls were covered with ice, and the mental connection was interrupted, which forced our hero to think about the following actions. The next ball, which Will attacked, met with an ice block and exploded, creating a smokescreen screen around Julian. When the smoke enveloped the foreign student, it began to soak into the skin, causing hellish pain to the opponent, from which Julian screamed. The teacher shouted to stop the fight, and one of the representatives of the Indian Federation managed to repel the flying sword from the student. But even after stopping the fight, until the smoke finally dissipated, our hero struck a crushing blow with a silver ball, piercing through the head of an Indian student. Olivia explained that Will crumbled his silver ball to catch Julian off guard, making everyone think that the fragments of the ball caused damage. But in fact, due to the sudden chaos, a gap appeared in the alien's defense, and this moment was enough to knock down the enemy with a mental whip. Will even hung a flying sword over his opponent to attract the attention of the deputy judge in order to eventually kill Julian with a silver ball. The adults watching the battle discussed Will's skills and how to take him as an apprentice, but the rector explained that Professor Grace was already teaching him. From the expression on the rector's face, it was clear that he had his own plans for our hero, which he would soon want to implement. After another student was carried away on a stretcher, the foreign teacher clenched his fist and cast an unkind glance in the direction of our guy, as if saying that next time our guy is definitely waiting for death.